I glanced to the left, beyond the woman beside me, to the upturned face of the boy. The glare made him look less than human. It drained the life away and reduced him to a sharp but flattened representation, like a head stamped on a coin. There was always a fascination about a fire, but this one elbowed aside all the others. I had been watching the city burn since Sunday morning. I had known London for as long as I'd known anything. In a sense, I was seeing my own history going up in smoke. To my surprise, it was oddly exhilarating. Part of me was enjoying the spectacle. Another part thought, and now everything must change. No one had really believed that the flames would reach the cathedral. St Paul's was commonly held to be impregnable. Squatting on its hill, it towered over the city and suburbs as it had for centuries. It was huge, nearly 600 feet long. The spire had fallen in the old Queen's time, and it had never been replaced. The tower remained, however, and even the body of the church, from the new portico in the west to the pinnacled choir in the east, was more than 100 feet above the ground. The walls were so massive that nothing could penetrate them. Besides, everyone said that the divine hand was protecting St Paul's, for the fire had had ample opportunity to attack it. Its school, just to the east, had already been consumed, along with its great libraries. I had spent much of my youth there, and I did not much mourn its loss. But until this evening, the flames had swirled around the church itself, leaving it untouched. St Paul's, they said, had always been more than a church, more than a cathedral. It stood for London itself. It was the soul of the city. It was invulnerable. I was wearing my second-best cloak, which I had taken the precaution of soaking in the Thames before coming here. I had learned the hard way that any protection from the heat and the fumes was better than none, and a cloak could hardly make me hotter than I already was. An almighty roar burst from within the building. A gout of fire gushed upwards above the choir. Flames spurted through the window openings. Hot air surged towards the watching people. The crowd fell back. "Oh, dear God," the boy said in a high, agonized voice. "The crib's gone up." One of the men in front threw down his hat and stamped on it. He flung out his arms and howled. His friends tried to restrain him. It was Maycock, the printer. It's an ill wind, I thought. At least that will please Master Williamson. Maycock and many of his fellows had stored their more valuable books, papers, and cases of type in the crypt of the cathedral, St Faith's, which served as their parish church. They had left nothing to chance. They had barred the doors with locks and bolts. They stopped up every opening that might possibly admit a spark or a draught. Even if the church tumbled about their heads, they thought, their books in St Faith's would be safe below ground for all eternity. But they and everyone else had reckoned without the strong, capricious wind. It had set fire to goods in the churchyard. It had blown sparks from there and from burning buildings nearby onto the roof of the choir. The roof had been under repair for months, so exposed timbers covered places where the lead had been damaged, and these had been baked by the bone-dry summer. The sparks danced towards them, and in that hot air it was not long before the first flames appeared. The wind fanned the flames, which ignited the network of beams supporting the roof. Seasoned oak burned almost as hot as sea coal. The heat had ruptured the vault beneath, and the great stones had tumbled down into the choir and the nave. The inside of the building had been full of wooden scaffolding, which had acted as kindling. In a matter of minutes, the whole interior was alight. Somehow the fire had reached the crypt. The rain of falling stones from the vault must have punctured the floor of the choir. The books and papers stored below in St Faith's had exploded in a gush of flame. Already the temperature where we were standing was increasing. The woman beside me stirred. "Pray God no one's in there still." Her voice was so close to my ear that I felt her breath on my skin. It was surely impossible to survive the heat inside the cathedral. It was bad enough out here, and it was getting worse. Anyone inside must be dead or dying, like the rats. Maycock the printer collapsed. His friends